The year is 323 BC. Alexander the Great, despite his young age, dies unexpectedly, sending a shockwave through the Greek world, shattering his massive empire into successor kingdoms ruled by his most important generals and bodyguards in a desperate scramble for power. This was a transformative period. Long was the classical age of city-states and leagues, replaced by the Hellenistic period, a time of great kingdoms and huge empires. Among these new empires, a massive kingdom, spawning from the Mediterranean to the Indian subcontinent, stood as the biggest and most impressive. And today, we will look at some of the history and the coins of this new superstate, the Seleucid Empire. Not only due to its massive size, but also due to its control of the famous Silk Route connecting Europe to the Far East, meant that the Seleucid monarchs would strike a massive number of coins. During its 2.5 centuries of existence, the iconography we see on coins reflects the political, impressive developments of the empire's history. We're only going to scratch the surface today, but I've picked 6 examples that illustrate quite well the passing of time in this region. So let's jump right in. Wherever Alexander went, he imposed the old Macedonian monetary standard established by his father, Philip II. This meant that wherever Alexander established his rule, the same coins in the same weight with very similar iconography were to be found, unifying the empire monetarily. And if there's something that we can say about money, is that it is very conservative. Money means trust, and a coin with a good reputation was very unlikely to be replaced. That is why, although the sudden death of Alexander in Babylon shocked the entire region, the money itself kept maintained, at least in the beginning, with the same appearance. What we have here on screen is a type that we've seen many times before. This is the very common tetradrachma struck under Alexander, with the head of Hercules wearing the Nemean lion on the obverse and Zeus sitting on his throne on the reverse. Probably one of the most well-known coins of the ancient world. This is, however, a posthumous piece. There are many Alexander tetradrachma out there, but this one for me has some historical significance in the circumstances of its minting. So the eastern half of Alexander's empire would be taken by one of his generals, Seleucus I, and this piece was struck in Babylon, the very city where Alexander died, just a few years after his death. And as we can see, it is nearly indistinguishable to a coin that would have been struck there during Alexander's lifetime. We have this very high relief bust of Hercules on the obverse, and these early pieces for me thread the line between a coin and a silver sculpture. The design itself, the face of Hercules, is nearly as thick as the flan of the coin. It would have taken an engraver of some serious skill to sculpt such a die. And as we head to the reverse, as always on these, we have a very anatomically well-made, full-body image of the seated Zeus, holding his scepter and an eagle. The symbols under his throne and at his left are the mint marks, which are used to identify the mint of Babylon in this case. And to the right, we have the word Alexandrou, from Alexander. Remember, Alexander was dead by the time this coin was struck, but absolutely everyone wanted to associate themselves to the image of that great man, which included issuing coins on his name. And at first, things were going incredibly well for the Seleucids. After Seleucus I died, as we jump to a coin of his successor, Antiochus I, struck between 281 and 261 BC, we can see that the coinage was still very impressive and in extremely high relief. This is a coin from the new Seleucid capital, Seleucia on the Tigris, close to modern-day Baghdad, where at a point in time, over 100,000 people lived, with the surrounding area housing over 500,000 people. This might not seem a lot for modern numbers, but back in the day, it was a major metropolis. And as we can see, there are some developments on coinage iconography. A generation had passed since Alexander's death, and we see each successor kingdom starting to mint coins with the faces of their own monarchs, living people, something unthinkable some decades prior. Here's an older face of Antiochus, so it must have been minted in the later years of his reign. He is looking up, almost as if divinely inspired. This makes sense historically, as the Hellenistic kings made a lot of effort to connect themselves with the divine to justify their rule, and they made sure that wherever it was possible, including on coins, their faces would be as present as much as possible so everyone could recognize him. Another interesting detail is the royal diadem. It, for people looking nowadays, may look like a bandana, but it's a diadem. There's a little bit of a difference. This is the symbol of Greek kings, and this will be a very common sight on Greek coins for the next 200 or so years. When we head to the reverse, we see another god very often worshipped by the Seleucids, Apollo. The region occupied by the Seleucids was a very multicultural zone. Due to its sheer size, it was enormous, and a big part of the population still adhering to the old Persian deities, including a series of sun gods and gods related to fire. The introduction of a Greek god, so closely related to the sun, to light, such as Apollo, might have been an interesting point of encounter between the old religions and the old culture of the zone and the Greek newcomers. We see Apollo sitting on the Omphalos, a sacred rock that marked the center of the world. He's seen inspecting his bow and arrow, and the legends Basileus Antiochou, now mentioning the ruling monarch, or from King Antiochus. But an inevitable, slow and irreversible decline was bound to come to the empire. The 2nd century BC was one of slow and steady decline to the Seleucids, as parts of the empire broke off and new emerging powers took their territory piece by piece, battle by battle. The next coin comes from a king that started his life as a captive. Demetrius I lived most of his early years in Rome as a hostage after Rome had defeated the Seleucids in war. The young man escaped captivity and made his way to the great city of Antioch, where he gathered support from the local elites and overthrew the ruling monarch. Since his ascension to power started in Antioch, I've decided to pick a coin from this exact same city. Antioch is a name many collectors will hear plenty of times in their collecting journey, as this city minted multiple millions of coins throughout the centuries. Greek coins, Roman coins, Byzantine coins, Antioch just minted a lot of stuff. But this time, instead of a tetradrachma, we have a single drachma. Such a lovely little thing. Just because it is small and worth a quarter of a tetradrachma, does not mean it received less attention by the engravers. As we can see, a very well accomplished bust of Demetrius on the obverse, wearing the imperial diadem, just like on bigger coins. And going to the reverse, however, we need to come up with terms with the fact that such a small coin did not allow for the massive designs we find on bigger coins. But we are presented with this lovely little cornucopia, representing the king who was here to bring abundance to all. This reverse is also quite full of legends. The later we get into the Seleucids' history, their coins tend to start having more and more text in them. In this case, we have Basileus Demetrios Suthros, or of King Demetrius the Savior, and a monogram representing the regnal year, which allows us to pinpoint this coin to the year 152 BC. So as we move forward on the late 2nd century BC, things start getting absolutely bleak for the Seleucids, being pushed left and right and seeing their territory getting smaller and smaller. They did not only have to worry about foreign encroachment, but absolute bloodbath that was its internal politics and struggles for power did not help the reign prosper. Next we go to this marvelous piece. with a juggernaut bust of mother and son, which hides in its lovely facade a really sinister story. So here we have Antiochus VIII and Cleopatra Thea, with this lovely veiled bust and wearing a stephan, a jeweled headband often worn by important women in Greece. Antiochus would fear the controlling attitude of his mother. He feared that she would make him a puppet, so he just had her poison his own mother. Coins after her death only showed the bust of the emperor, which narrows down the date of this particular coin for between 125 to 121 BC. And as we head to the reverse, we have this very old design of Jupiter seated, holding the scepter and a small Nike or victory, reminiscent of the old coins of Alexander, if you remember the very first coin I showed you. But instead of the very simple legends of the coins of Alexander, we have quite a mouthful here, so let's go over each of the things that are written down. So we have Basilissa Cleopatra Thea, from the Queen Cleopatra Thea, Kai Basileus Antioxou, and of King Antiochus. Really cool to see a legend referring to two authorities. And then we finally enter the 1st century BC. The Seleucids are on their last legs. A rump state with an area restricted to the city of Antioch and its surrounding regions. Pressed by the Parthians to the east, Egypt to the south, and even the Romans to the west. The situation is dire, and King Antiochus X, who struck this coin here between 94 and 88 BC, hangs to the throne by a thread. In fact, he will be deposed and fight his way back to the position of king, only to have a reign plagued by internal conflicts. This is a sad coin of a very sad man. As we start analyzing the obverse, we see that there's a certain decline in the quality of the artistry. The very well proportioned busts of previous kings give way to a more stylized, idealized image of the king. Although it is commendable that even a rump state like them at the time, they were still able to make some gorgeous coins. This is still a very attractive piece, and definitely superior in artistry to, for example, the Roman denarii at the time. On the reverse, we see once again Antiochus trying to evoke the old image of past times. We see once again Zeus sitting on his throne, holding the scepter and Nike. There's quite a lot written here, so let's go over little by little. First, we have Basileus Antiochou of King Antiochus, Eusebes, the pious, and finally Philopator, father-loving, a reference to the devotion to his father, Antiochus IX, who was killed in battle by an usurper, and then Antiochus X, his son, avenged his father, got rid of the usurper, and therefore was honored with Philopator. But unfortunately, the damage was already done. The Seleucids would finally crumble, and the encroaching power of Rome would just sweep them aside and transform the last territories of the Seleucids in just another Roman province. Antioch, the last Seleucid capital, would be in Roman hands for nearly a millennia and strike countless of coins for Rome. So to illustrate this, here we have the first series of coins struck in the ex-Seleucid capital, now under the Romans. This is a tetradrachma of the first emperor, Augustus. On the obverse, we see this very elegant bust of the emperor, just like how he was depicted in the native Roman denarii. But since the language of the region was Greek, the legends are in Greek. We can read Caesaros Sebasto or Caesar Augustus. Very simple and straightforward. Heading to the reverse, now instead of the reference to some deity who validates the king's prerogatives to rule, we have an incarnation of Antioch itself. Here we see the goddess Tyche. She was the protector goddess of cities, and even had, as we can see, a crown made out of the city walls. So we can see her sitting over a rock, and by her side, flowing, so to speak, we see the incarnation of Antioch's river, Orontes. This is a very smart move on Augustus' part. Instead of showing he was just the new management, someone chosen by God to rule them, the typical thing, we have this clear message to the people of the city itself. A message of certain autonomy, I would say, as the entire city is honored on the reverse, instead of just calling attention to the ruling person. Collecting the coins of the Seleucid Empire is going on this lovely journey of an incredible, massive empire who just had a sad end piece by piece as it rotted away. From the very start, the empire was too big, and piece by piece, internal war by internal war, it just crumbled under its own massive size. Fortunately, throughout all of its history, however, it had a very strong numismatic history, minting coins in very good quality and good enough numbers to be reasonably attainable to most collectors today. And in case you are interested in expanding your own Seleucid collection or starting a Greek theme, this video and these fantastic coins have been brought to you by our lovely sponsors at Savoca Coins, who will be organizing their 124th silver auction next January 23rd, where these and other really great pieces will be up for auction. So their silver auctions focus on higher quality pieces. So if you're looking for quality, for good condition, and for some rarities even, definitely check them out. There's something for everyone there. Greek, Romans, medievals, Byzantines, even modern pieces. And if you're watching this video after the auction date, don't worry, just head over to savoca-coins.com and take a look, as other auctions should definitely be happening soon. So now I want to hear from you, collectors. Do you have any Seleucid coins? Have you got a favorite Seleucid king? Let us know in the comment section down below. And please, consider liking this video and subscribing if you liked it. It really helps the channel. So I hope you all enjoyed it. Happy collecting, and I'll see you soon.